Today, about the first chapter of history that we will be going over will be World War One. So World War One is basically just which is the first major war there is. Brief introduction about me before we actually get into related content. I'm a student at Bergen County Academy, the Academy for Business and Finance to be more specific. Name of the organization, if anyone here is interested, is because I want to use what I learned to help others and to teach others. And I believe that it also reinforces my own knowledge of this material because in the process of making these slides, I had to review many things that I already forgot. So that's helping me review my own knowledge. So it's kind of a learning experience for myself as well. And now let's get started. So what will we be covering? So just as content before we start, we certainly will not be covering everything right here just in one class. This is meant to be not for the entire course, but the entire part of the course about World War One, for our learning experience about World War One. Firstly, background, presenting some background information about the war, how did it start, and what happened. So if you ask a person, what was the most important person of the 20th century? There are many answers that could be possible, but I would say person, Philo Princess was the most important. And let me just get up to this. So this person, some would say, would be the most important person. Is he important? What exactly did he do? He was a member of Black Hand. What's a Black Hand? It's the person who was in charge of assassinating Archduke Fernandez, the Austrian-Hungarian crown. The reason why this single action was so important was because this right here was the single action that led to the World War One, which in turn led to the World War Two, which in turn led to the Cold War and led to everything that happened afterwards. He basically set off this chain of events of conflict and wars. So that's the reason why he's important. But why does he want to just assassinate Archduke Fernandez, you may be asking, and who even is this person that he assassinated? The person he assassinated was Archduke Fernandez, heir of the Austrian-Hungarian crown, which means that in Europe, there is this small country called Austria-Hungary. See, this is basically his assassination in action. In this small country called the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, well, it's not really a small country, but it's this European country named Austrian-Hungarian Empire. There is this small place called Serbia. Serbia actually used to be independent from the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, but surrounded. Don't get me wrong, they're still independent, but they got surrounded. However, another small country with a Serbian population and also a certain amount of Muslim population called Bosnia and Herzegovina got taken over by Hungarian Empire. They want independence because they're very culturally different from both Austria and Hungary. So they basically just got taken over. And their way of looking for independence was by staging assassinations like this person is doing here. So their way of protest against the crown of the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was assassinating their heir. So what does the heir mean? The heir basically means was almost always the son. Once the king passed away, the person who got assassinated or the heir will become the next king of the empire. So that was basically their way of protest. They would assassinate the person who was to become the next king so that they wouldn't have a king anymore. So they basically destroyed their option of having a king already being there, a future king. It's not just something that Bosnia and Herzegovina was annexed by the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Annexed is basically a fancy word for getting taken over. And there's a tiny bit of background to the Russo-Turkish War, but you don't really need to know too specific about it. Just know that a small country called Bosnia and Herzegovina got taken over by Austrian-Hungarian Empire. You can see this is a comparison of the two maps. This is just Serbia in both maps, and I circled it with this black circle to make it stand out more. If you look at the two maps, you may be asking, well, I don't see that much changes in Austrian-Hungarian Empire, the Austrian Empire, Austria-Hungary Empire. So why is this significant and why do I keep talking about Serbia? Well, I'll get into that later. The reason why he assassinated was because of nationalism. So he displayed a lot of nationalism. So what is nationalism? Nationalism is basically when you support your own nation while hurting other nations. So there are two components to nationalism. You have to meet both requirements, well, quote unquote requirements, to be considered nationalist. You have to want your own country to be the best, and you also have to make sure that other countries are not good. So you have to hurt the interests of other countries. In order to become the best, you have to hurt others. So you don't just want your own country to be the best. You also want your own country to be better than the other nations. There's a difference between nationalism and patriotism. Patriotism is just, I want my country to be the best. But nationalism is, I want my country to be the best, and I also want other countries to be worse than my country. Notion of nationalism, this kind of sentiment was very widespread, extremely widespread in Europe during this time, just before World War I happened. Nationalism was very common. It was a force common in every single country at the time. In fact, it was a time when countries were starting to want to become independent because many countries were taking over. So it was during this time that the countries that were taking over wanted to declare independence. Of nationalism was Serbian nationalism. Now, I will get into why Serbia is involved in all of this. Yeah, and Herzegovina, this small country that got taken over. I wouldn't say that it's exactly the same as Serbia, but it has a large Serbian minority. Serbians got taken over by the Hungarian Empire. At this time was also seeing nationalism. So there was also Serbian nationalism at the time. Serbs were like, oh, we're all Serbian. We shouldn't be ruled by other countries. We should have independence. Self-determination is just another word for independence. Independence from Austrian-Hungarian Empire, right? Their way of revolting was basically through the revolution. They would say, well, yes, by modern standards, it wasn't really a revolution because they basically just assassinated one person. But back in the day, that was a huge deal. Assassinating someone from the royal family, that was basically treason. It was widespread all over Europe. So just make sure to understand this. We're just focusing on this corner of the world in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. But this kind of emotion was widespread all over Europe. So as you can see, Europe was very chaotic back then. Different groups all wanted themselves to be the best. This is just something to remember, as I said. Second factor that major role in the World War I, in the starting of the World War I, was imperialism. What is imperialism? Imperialism is basically expanding a country's power to foreign lands. So what does this mean? This basically means that you're using your country's power to conquer other nations. And these nations are usually very far away. So imagine if my house was a nation, right? My house was an independent nation. Imperialism would be if I left my house to go conquer the house next door, to chase my neighbors out and then take over their house. That would be considered imperialism. Taking over or land that don't belong to the main place where this was happening. Don't get me wrong, imperialism taking over other lands by European nations, it was mainly Europe at the time doing this, was all over the place. It was in Asia, South America, basically every single place you could think of. But the main place where this was happening was in Africa. So as you can see, at the time, there was barely a single independent place in Africa. So every single African nation belonged to some kind of European country. So as you can see, to this map, I think the ones belong to Belgium, the blue ones belong to France, and the black one belongs to Germany. The black one, there were multiple territories. In this map, right, a single country is independent. But why would this be a problem? Why? So you may be asking, why would this be a problem? They can take over how many lands they want. So why would this lead to the World War I? The key problem with taking over land, when you have multiple takers of land, it's not going to take long before they start fighting over which land who can take. So let me go back to my example of taking over my neighbor's house, right? Say if I wasn't the only one who wanted my neighbor's house. When I showed up at my neighbor's house to take it over, I found the entire street was there. The entire street had the same idea as me and all wanted to take over my neighbor's house. This will lead to a major problem. The problem here is that we have no way of determining who should be the one to take over my neighbor's house. So it's not going to take long before we start fighting among ourselves. So this is the reason why imperialism led to World War One, because not only were the powers fighting in Europe, they were also fighting because of things that were happening in Africa at the time. This was one of the major reasons why they wanted to fight this war at all. It was because they wanted to protect the territories that they had taken over. That arrow is just to show that this Greyland right here, this Greyland is actually the only independent place in Europe at the time. Sorry, in Africa, I mean, at the time. Think about that. There was only one nation in Africa at the time that wasn't colonized, that wasn't controlled by another nation. That's how widespread this imperialism was. And the third reason why World War One happened was because of militarism. What's militarism? Militarism is basically mass production of munitions, of ammunition, of weapons. So what does this mean? Now, we've said that the countries all have the reasons to fight that war. They all think that they're better than each other. They all want to protect their territories, right? But even if you had the reason, how are you going to fight the war if you don't have the guns, the bullets to fight the war, right? So you would need the weapons to fight the war. That's where this comes in, militarism. Right before the start of World War One, because the countries said that there was going to be a war. So every single country was producing weapons. They were just producing a lot of weapons. With that many weapons, the only way to use that many weapons is to fight a war, right? Machinery, the object to fight the war with. The key reason that allowed them to produce this many weapons was the Industrial Revolution. Industrial Revolution, it's a really complicated event. Now you just need to understand that it's this period of human history when there was mass production, when there were a lot of factories that could produce many things. So for the first time in human history, there was mass production of every single thing you can think of. So there are more ways of producing weapons for them. As you can see in this image right here, every single country is armed to the teeth right now. Another reason is because of alliances. So now let's just recap what the situation in Europe was like in, say, 1913, just 1 year before the war actually started. The countries all think that they're better than each other. They all have territories that they want to defend. They all have lands across the entire globe that they hope to defend. And they're all producing weapons to have the objects to fight a war with. They're prepared to fight a war. And now the last one is alliances. Not only do they have these three factors, they also formed alliances with each other. So what's an alliance? So let's say if I knew that I was going to be taking over the house next door, but I signed this treaty. So I basically promised. We mutually promised each other with my neighbor on the left side of the house. He were attacked. If his house were robbed, I would go help him fight off the robbers. But if my house were robbed or my house were attacked, he would have to come and help my house and help me fend off the robbers. So this is basically an alliance. Countries were doing this too. Countries were telling each other, if your country gets invaded, I will send troops to help your country. If my country gets invaded, to send troops to come and help me, right? And this was very complicated. There were webs of alliances all over. But at the end of the day, there were really two major alliances because every single person, every single country was promising to defend other countries and being promised by other countries. At the end of the day, this web all culminated into two major alliances, two major blocks of countries, friends that were friendly with each other. They were called German Empire, Austria, Hungary, and Italy as alliance. And then the United Kingdom, France, and Russia as another one. These was, well, I guess you could call it the side. World War One. So who exactly is fighting who, whatever this color is, and these countries are just neutral. So that means that they're simply not involved in the fight. This map actually isn't that accurate because this is just before the war. So, for example, Ottoman Empire joined the war, and Belgium also joined the war, and then some places were invaded, and Romania also joined the war. So this map were just some of the major powers, I guess, some of the major players, but some other nations that are listed as neutral here actually joined the war much later. This is not like how the war played out exactly. So just as a recap, there were multiple factors that led to this conflict in the first place, including nationalism, imperialism, militarism, and alliances. But the final thing is the war, right? Let's say if you have a bucket of gunpowder, the bucket of gunpowder, it could be lit. The thing gives it the conditions, the background for it to lit are these four reasons. But actual fire that lit the bucket of gunpowder was this event right here, the assassination of the archduke, which was went over in the beginning. To understand the World War One, I have a tip. Just think of it all as a chain of events. So one event led to the next. So it's basically just a chain of events of one thing happening after the next thing. Let's move on to the warfare section of the book. Actually, a misspelling on my part, so I will correct that later. But this should say warfare. And then this quote right here says, the death of one man is really the death of millions is statistic. And this is actually an anonymous quote. So what this means is that the death of one man it's a very sad event. 1 million soldiers died. That wouldn't be a sad event anymore. That's simply a fact. The reason why there's this quote to describe war, any kind of mass war. You think about it. If one man died of the street, that would be a really sad event, right? Oh, it's so sad that that person died. There's so many wars going on every single day. It's not a sad event anymore. You feel sad necessarily to a personal level for the soldiers that a lot of deaths happened during World War One. The first battle was the first part battle of the Marne. So when did this battle happen? This battle mainly happened from September 5th to September 12th. Where did it happen? It happened in the Marne River near Paris. This wasn't the first, quote unquote, the first gunshot of World War One, but this was the first major battle that you actually have to know. This happened in France. And what is the first battle was because this battle started in September 5th, right? And just to put that in context, World War One started in late July, and this battle happened in September 5th. So this battle was 2 months into the war. Why is this battle considered a major battle that was extremely important? Germany wanted to defeat France. Let me just show you where this war actually. So you see this black circle right here. This right here is the capital of France. Mainly the region that's circled by the black circle is capital of France, which is Paris. So where Paris is located. The battle took place. It's right in this pink area right here, by this circle. It's right within this circle. So as you can see, this battle took place really, really near capital. And why did it take place so near the French capital? Because Germany wanted to defeat France. France was basically Germany's target. That was the first nation that they wanted to defeat. Right at the start of the war, Germany just decided to invade France. The reason why they wanted to invade France was because Germany realized they had a huge problem. They had a major problem within the war. The problem was that they were surrounded. They were actually surrounded on both sides by enemy forces. This was a map of the time, right? You can see the countries in red were on one team. The countries on blue were on a separate team, on another team, right? Russia on one side is attacking Germany. But France is also attacking Germany from the other side. Germany was boxed in, basically. Germany had nowhere to go. Germany basically had to divide their troops. Send some troops over here to fight France, and send some troops here to fight Russia, all at the same time. And then Britain also sent some troops to come to France to fight. Germany was basically surrounded. The only way of getting out of this situation was to defeat one side first and then the other. had to defeat one of these nations first to defeat the other. And then he decided to set their eyes on France. They decided to say, we're going to attack France first. They basically tried to overcome France as the first nation that they would invade. You may be wondering who exactly won this war, but we'll get into that just after a few seconds. I have a quick recap because especially for classes like this, it's quite easy to get the content at one of the factors. So I will just be sending towards the chat before we get started. We will be going into Germany's strategy, exactly what they did during the battle. Just as a background for what the battle actually was. At this point in the war, Germany had conquered large amounts of land in both France and Belgium. I know that map may seem confusing, but this one here is Germany. So Germany is the country that's on the right here. These arrows basically show the German invasion of the two countries, France and Belgium, on the same side as France. Germany at this point had already taken over large amounts of land in both France and Belgium through military conflict. To show you how separate France was a victory, because France was almost losing at this point. France basically was almost near to the point of losing the war at this point. How do you see that? These are tactics in Paris. France at this time had already prepared tactics to evacuate civilians because France was getting ready for their main city of Paris to be taken over by Germany at any time. They were making preparations to escape already. So that just shows how much of a dangerous position they were in. Because Paris is actually pretty close to Germany relative to the other French cities. It wasn't right on the border, but it was more to the north side. So pretty near Germany. Germany was already pretty close to their capital city in the first place. And now German forces are already successfully invaded both France and Belgium. They actually took over a large part of Belgium. France was also more in danger. What does this mean? This means that France desperately needed to win and to push Germany out. He desperately needed to push Germany back, to push Germany away from their main chief city. I don't like to you on a post question what exactly the result was. So I will just tell you the result right now. The French did win. The French beat Germans and they pushed Germans back, and they also completely destroyed their plan of taking over Paris. This point, Germany had no chance of taking Paris because they got much more closer to the border. Germans originally intended to just have this quick taking over of Paris, but that just completely got swept aside by France. The second implication of this was the start of French warfare. Now that the Germans got pushed back, they realized that they couldn't attack directly. Back in the days, before this battle, the way that the Germans basically invaded massive amounts of troops past the borders and invaded France. That was basically what they did. But now that the French pushed them back, they started to realize that this strategy did not work. Because while marching through France, their soldiers could be shot, they could be attacked by the French who are fighting. So what they did was they dug trenches. You'll be asking, what's a trench? This is actually a major part of World War I because this is a pattern that exists basically in every single scenario in World War I. In every single battle, this was the thing. Well, in most battles, this was the thing. A trench is basically this. Think of it as a tunnel in the ground without a roof. Basically, this in the ground that they dig. During World War I, all over the place, there were just miles upon miles of these massive posts. There were thousands of miles, these massive posts through the entire battlefield. The reason why they took so much resources, effort, time, soldiers, the money, was because it protected your soldiers. It was able to successfully protect their soldiers against direct attacks and the forces. So this was what they decided. The soldiers would just hide within the trenches with some sandbags to protect the soldiers from any gunfire. Soldiers would just peek their heads out to fire enemies, right, without getting shot. Well, sometimes they did get shot. But at least it protected more protection than just walking through this Germany got defeated, they used a major during wars are where inventions are the most common. This is just my personal opinion, but I've always thought that wars are where the most inventions happen because during peaceful times, you wouldn't have a need to invent anything, right? You need things that will make your life better. Like for example, I would like to have a machine that basically manufactures money for me, basically improve my life a lot. But I don't desperately need that thing. I can still survive without that object. Wars like this. Every single country is trying to beat the other countries with better weapons and better equipment. So that basically just gives them a lot of motivation to manufacture things. And that's exactly what Germany did during this time. Germany used a new piece of technology called poison gas. So what exactly is poison gas? Poison gas makes others feel sick. No, feel sick is actually an understatement of what it does. It usually kills, or at least very serious injury. So basically, when you breathe in the gas, you basically get severely injured or killed, depending on what type of gas it is. Germany was the first country to actually use it. By the way, the first time they used it, so the first time in human history when this weapon was used was in Belgium by Germany during World War I. Was really significant and a better image for this slide because this is actually after the war, after the soldiers had already been exposed to the technology. When they were first exposed to poison gas, there was no way that they had fancy gas masks, right? This was much after the war. So the first time that the poison gas, they were all extremely confused. What on earth is this new weapon that's making it hard for complicating me? We're all very confused. And of course, they didn't have gas. Second thing that Germany did in between this period was change the Lusitania. And I will spend a lot of time going over this, probably the remainder of this class, because this was a major event. It was a small event. Basically, this boat called the Lusitania got sank by Germany. Germany basically hit the boat and caused it to sink. Basically, killed the passengers on the boat. But this, as I said, it's a chain of events. This caused many other things. And this, in my opinion, is a huge mistake with Germany. And a lot of historians would agree with me in saying that Germany should not have done it. This was a very bad move by Germany. Just add some background. By this point, Germany had a strategy. They used what I call a U-boat. U-boats are basically German submarines, basically boats that go under the water and can hit ships and sink ships. The reason why they wanted to do this was to hurt the economy of other nations. So let me go back to my scenario of countries, not countries, sorry, of me invading my neighbor's house. Right? So what do I need to invade my neighbor's house? I need some kind of weapon, right? I need sticks, knives, right? Whatever type of weapon I need, right? How am I gonna get those weapons? I need to buy them, right? And I need to do online shopping to buy them. But how is this online shopping going to come to them? They're gonna come to boxes, right? They're gonna come to delivery to my house, right? So what's one way of making sure that I can't find my neighbor? My neighbors came and stole my package. If they just stop those packages from successfully being delivered to my house, that would be a way of making me fight the war, making me not be able to fight the war, right? Because now that I don't have access to these weapons, how am I supposed to fight my neighbors, right? I can't fight with my bare hands, right? So take that into the context of World War I. Germany was basically doing the same thing. Germany was thinking both of Great Britain, France, Belgium, basically every single country. Germany was thinking the both of these things. Germany wanted to cut them off from the outside world. The countries, they still needed to manufacture weapons during the war, right? and they still need to buy weapons during the war, right? So how are they going to buy weapons? The weapons cannot be shipped to them. Every single time that they get a weapon, the weapon is shipped to them on like a boat like this. Submarines just sink the boat. Just make sure that the boat cannot arrive at their final destination. So now they don't have access to the weapons, right? So this right here is just a way of crippling a country and making sure that they cannot get the supplies that they need. Now, really thinking, well, this sounds like a pretty good strategy, right? Just to make sure that they don't have the proper resources to fight a war. It was a good strategy until Germany sinks the Lusitania. It wasn't a good strategy. Why? Yes. The Lusitania was carrying what weapons? There is a lot of evidence that the Lusitania was carrying shipments of resources that would be used to fight Germany. But the problem was the Lusitania had American citizens aboard. Let me repeat that. There were citizens of the United States aboard the ship called Lusitania. Why is that important? Because in the boat, Germany basically killed American citizens. By this point in the war, Germany was already busy fighting both Russia and France and all the countries, right? So they were already fighting. But the United States or America was still neutral at this point. America was just not involved. Two European nations can fight it out amongst yourselves. I'll just manufacture weapons and good money. I'll stay outside and sell weapons to every single country. It was just a business opportunity to America so far. But this was a part of the event that got America involved in the war. America decided to join the war and fight Germany in 1917. And why did they join? This right here was one of the reasons, and I will go over to the next reason in next class. The thinking of the Lusitania was one of the things that cost the U.S. right? Because think about it. Germany killed American citizens. So of course, America would not pay about this, right? Citizens, because you're actually fighting their country. But the U.S., I'm completely neutral. I'm not even inside this war. Why are you killing me? I'm just here. I'm telling you. I'm trying to sell you weapons. So why are you killing me? Of course, the U.S. got mad. But thinking from the German perspective, the perspective of this selling right here, there was no way of them telling who exactly was on that boat. Thinking this boat, they didn't know that there were American citizens of war because about it, this submarine is just underwater. They can only see there's a boat right there, right? And that boat is not our boat, right? That boat is not a German boat. There's no way of knowing who exactly is inside that boat. But this kind of carelessness obviously just led to the downfall of Germany and them getting overwhelmed at the end of the day.